I'm Giulia Rinaldi. I'm 35. I built a home, not a war.
I'm Marco De Santis. I'm 42. I build fast, no questions.
I'm Matteo De Santis. I'm 14. I see what they hide.
I'm Adriana, mamma di Marco. In my family, you endure.
I'm Chiara Bianchi. I'm 29. I don't wait, I take.
I'm Francesca Moretti. I'm 36. I hear everything and I repeat it.
I'm Paolo Venturi. I'm 58. One letter can ruin a man.
I'm Serena Lupi. I'm 52. In court, the paper speaks.
This video won't show much, and that's on purpose. You've already met our characters. Now just listen, and let this story come alive inside you. Turn on your imagination.
If someone had told me a year ago that my marriage would start collapsing because of a whisper between two men on a job site, I would have laughed. I would have said tragedies come in loud, slammed doors, suitcases, ugly phone calls in the middle of the night. Mine didn't. Mine began in silence. The kind of silence where you can hear paper being handled too carefully, like it matters more than the truth. My name is Giulia Rinaldi. I'm 35 years old, and I built a home, not a war. Saying it out loud still feels strange, like I'm explaining myself to a judge who never asked. But it's true. I lived my family life the way some people run a project, patiently, lovingly, stubbornly. Not because I'm boring, because I'm the kind of woman who believes in we. Marco De Santis walked into my life with the smile of a man who already thinks he's won before the game even starts. I remember everything about that smile. The slight lift at the corner of his mouth, the confident eyes, the way he smelled like rain and espresso that first night. We met in Rome at a friend's birthday dinner. Too many people in a small apartment, pasta on the table, windows fogged from everyone's breath and laughter. He didn't charm the whole room. He looked at me like I was the only person there. "Giulia, right?" he asked, saying my name like it belonged on his tongue. "You look like you're bored." "And you look like you're interested in everything," I shot back, surprised at myself because I was usually careful with my words. He laughed, low and easy, and leaned in a little closer. "I'm interested where there's meaning," he said, "and where there's someone who doesn't perform." Back then, I thought that was honesty. Now, I hear the line differently. I didn't fall in love immediately. I've never been that woman. I like to watch. I like to think I can tell the difference between sincerity and a show. Marco talked about the future like it was a plan, not a fantasy. He worked construction and renovations, took jobs all over the city, came home late with dust on his sleeves and stress behind his eyes. He told me it was hard to build something in Rome without the right last name or the right connections, and there was truth in that. I trusted him because I wanted to, and because he had this talent. He could turn something small into something that felt like destiny. He'd bring me a pastry from the morning bar and say, "I saw it, and out of you." And I think, a man who thinks of you at 7 a.m. must love you. We got married fast, almost stubbornly. I remember my mother's face when I told her. No screaming, no tears. She just took my hands in hers and held them for a long time. "Are you sure?" she asked. I nodded. I feel like with him, there will be a home. Not happiness. Home. Home is heavier. It comes with responsibility, and I was ready. A year later, Matteo was born. Dark eyes like Marco's, my stubborn chin, that's what the nurse joked. I was exhausted and laughing, holding my son like he was the most fragile promise on earth. Marco cried, quietly, because he hated being seen with tears. He stood by the hospital bed and touched Matteo's tiny head like he was afraid he'd break him. "We're going to do everything right," he told me. "I swear." And I believed him. Then Adriana arrived. Not Mrs. DeSantis, not Signora, just Adriana. Everyone said it the same way, Mama Di Marco, as if that title came with authority you didn't question. She could be kind, yes. She could bring soup, she could kiss Matteo's forehead and call him Tesoro. But even when she smiled, you couldn't relax. Her kindness always carried weight, like a hand resting on your shoulder a little too firmly. "You have a good boy," she'd say, looking at Matteo like she was inspecting fabric. "And Marco is a good man. You must hold the family." "I do," I'd answer politely. I thought that was normal. Italy is family, tradition, endurance. Every family has a strong mother who believes she knows best. I didn't want a war with Adriana. I wanted peace. I worked, not because Marco demanded it, but because I don't know how to be helpless. I helped him with schedules, payments, paperwork, subcontractors, the small things he called small. Those small things built the life we lived. "Julia," Marco used to say, "you're my order." I thought it was a compliment. For 10 years, I believed we were building something real, not just renovating other people's apartments, but building our future. I knew his crews, his suppliers, his clients. I remembered names better than my own birthday. I could tell what mood he was in by the sound of his footsteps in the hallway. And I was happy in that kind of life. Home isn't always a celebration. Sometimes home is washing your husband's work jacket at 2 a.m. so he doesn't walk into a job site wearing yesterday's dust. Sometimes it's handing him a glass of water without asking. Sometimes it's sitting in silence together and not feeling lonely. Matteo grew up gentle, the kind of boy who watches you closely, like he's learning the world through your face. He didn't throw many tantrums. He asked questions. "Mom," he asked once when he was 8, "why does Dad always talk so loud on the phone?" I smiled and ran my fingers through his hair. "Because Dad thinks it helps people hear him." Matteo frowned. "What if he's wrong?" I almost said, "Your father is never wrong," because that's the lie women tell themselves when they're trying to keep a family stable. But I looked at my son and told the truth. Then he needs to learn. Matteo nodded like an adult, and in that nod was the beginning of his future pain. He learned too early how to see. Things didn't change all at once. They changed like temperature in a room. So slowly you don't notice it's gotten cold until you're already shivering. Marco started speaking faster, snapping when I asked too many questions. "Julia, I'm at the site," he'd say, not even looking up. "I'm handling things. Don't interrogate me." Interrogate. That word stung, because I wasn't interrogating. I was caring. I was holding the home. Adriana started coming over more often, not like a grandmother visiting her grandson, more like an inspector. She'd stand in my kitchen, look at the clean sink, and say, "Good, a woman must keep a home clean. It's the face of the family." Then, like it was nothing, "And Marco must keep the business. Don't interfere." Don't interfere. That was her favorite. And I kept smiling like I didn't feel the bruise. One morning, Marco left early and forgot his car keys on the table. I grabbed them and rushed to the stairs, and Matteo was standing in the hallway with his backpack, watching me like he wanted to say something but didn't know how. "Mom," he started. "Yes, amore?" He swallowed. "Dad was on the phone last night. He said, 'We can't pull this off. I don't know what this is, but he was angry.'" I froze with the keys in my hand. Then I forced a smile. Adults say things like that when they're tired, I told him. Don't worry. Matteo didn't smile back. He just nodded, quietly, like he heard me, but he didn't believe me. I kissed his forehead and left, and the whole way down the stairs, I kept telling myself it was just stress, just work, just a phase. Because that's what people do when they love someone. They explain, they soften, they delay the truth until the truth doesn't care anymore. That day, I decided to stop by Marco's job site. Not out of suspicion, out of care. He was renovating an old apartment. High ceilings, stubborn walls, complicated wiring. I made him a thermos of coffee and packed 2 pastries because I knew he'd forget to eat if he got focused. Rome smelled like wet stone and leaves after the rain. I walked with that little paper bag in my hand, thinking I was walking into my normal life. The life where my husband would smile, my son would tell me about school, and my mother-in-law would, well, still be my mother-in-law. At the building entrance, I heard voices. 2 men. Low. Businesslike. One was Marco. I would have recognized him anywhere. The confident tone, the way he used words like pressure. The other voice was unfamiliar. Calm. The voice of a man who doesn't negotiate, he informs. I stopped on the landing. Not to eavesdrop, just to wait. I didn't want to barge in. And then I heard the sentence that stole the air from my lungs. If she signs, you transfer the liability to her. Otherwise, it stays with you. Personally, Marco. I didn't understand every legal word, but I understood she, and I understood personally. Marco answered sharply. She's not involved. She's just at home. Just at home. I stood there with coffee and pastries in my hand, and it wasn't the cold weather that made my skin go tight. It was the ease in his voice when he dismissed me, like I wasn't his wife, like I was furniture. The other man said, quietly, almost tired, "Then don't delay. If this surfaces later, it'll be worse for everyone." Marco gave a short laugh. "It won't surface." My fingers tightened around the bag until the paper handles cut into my skin. I should have stepped out. I should have said, "What are you talking about?" I should have demanded a truth right there on the stairs. But my feet didn't move. My heart did, loud, panicked, like it was afraid they'd hear it. And that was the moment I understood something I didn't want to understand. The thing I called a home might have been turning into something else for a long time. I just didn't see it. I took one quiet step back, then another, like a thief. I'd never been a thief in my life, but in that second, it felt like if I walked into that conversation, my whole life would explode on that staircase, and I wasn't ready to explode in front of strangers. I turned around and went back down, forcing my body to move normally, with my stupid little bag of coffee and pastries, like a symbol of how much you can love someone while he's discussing how to place responsibility on you like a burden you never agreed to carry. When I stepped outside, rain started again. Light, persistent, almost cruel. I stood under the awning, staring at the wet cobblestones, and one thought landed in my mind with terrifying simplicity. If I'm not involved, then someone worked hard to make sure I stayed that way. And for the first time in years, what I felt wasn't sadness. It wasn't even anger. It was fear. Not for me, for Matteo. Because in any adult war, the child gets pulled in first, whether anyone admits it or not. And standing there in the rain, I finally understood. I built a home. but I was living in a story where other people had been writing the rules. I drove home like I was underwater. Rome was still Rome. People arguing over parking spots, scooters cutting through wet streets, someone laughing into a phone like the world was perfectly normal. And I remember thinking, how can the city keep moving when my life just stopped? The weird part is, I didn't cry. I always thought fear came with tears, like rain you can't control. But what showed up instead was this sharp, cold focus. The kind you get when your child falls and you don't have time to panic. You just move, you check, you fix, you protect. I opened the apartment door and heard Matteo's voice from his room. He was on the phone, trying to sound casual. Then he laughed, short and forced. My son has a certain laugh when he's pretending he isn't scared. He doesn't know he does it, but I know. I'm his mother. I set the coffee and pastries down on the kitchen table, and suddenly they looked ridiculous, like a prop in a scene where the woman is still acting like everything is fine while the man is making plans behind her back. I took off my coat, hung it neatly, because my hands have always loved order, even when my heart doesn't. Matteo came into the hallway with his backpack half-zipped. He saw my face and froze like he'd walked into a room with bad air. "Mom, are you okay?" I smiled too fast. "Of course, just tired. School?" He nodded, but he didn't move. His eyes stayed on me like he was reading something I wasn't saying. "You're pale," he said. I wanted to joke. I wanted to say, "It's the lighting." I wanted to make it small. But nothing in my throat worked the way it usually did. I reached up and fixed his collar, an old habit, a mother's excuse to touch her child when she needs to feel something real. "I'm fine, amore," I said. "Just a lot of things." Matteo didn't buy it. He didn't argue. He just watched. "Is Dad coming home tonight?" he asked, like it was casual. "Late," I said. "He has the sight." Matteo tightened his grip on the backpack strap. "He always has the sight." I nodded like he'd commented on the weather. "Go, or you'll be late." He stepped forward and hugged me quickly, the way teenagers hug when they still need it but don't want it to last too long. And then he whispered into my hair, so soft I almost didn't hear it. "If something happens, tell me." My chest tightened. I kissed his temple. "If something happens, I'll tell you first." He left. The door shut, and the apartment went so quiet I could hear the refrigerator click. I stood in the kitchen, replaying the words I'd heard on that staircase. If she signs, transfer the liability. Personally, Marco. She's not involved. She's just at home. What did that even mean? What was I supposed to sign? What did they think I would do? Smile, hold a pen, and hand my life over because someone called it a formality? I made tea, forgot the sugar, drank it bitter, and barely noticed. My phone sat on the table like it was waiting for me to do something. I stared at it and thought of Francesca. Francesca Moretti had been my friend for so long I couldn't remember the beginning of it. She was the person who showed up with wine when life felt heavy, the person who texted at midnight just to say, "Breathe," the person I thought I could trust. I dialed her number, and then I stopped. Not because I didn't want comfort, but because something inside me whispered, "Don't tell anyone everything yet." If Marco was saying I wasn't involved, it meant he needed me to stay uninvolved, which meant the moment he sensed I was getting close to the truth, he'd move faster. He'd tighten the net. I set the phone face down on the table, and I did what I've always done when I'm afraid. I cleaned. Not because cleaning fixes anything, but because it gives your hands a job while your mind tries to survive. Dishwasher, laundry, a grocery list I didn't even need. A few hours later, my phone rang. Unknown number. Normally, I don't pick up unknown numbers, but that day my body answered before my brain could argue. Pronto? There was a pause on the line, like the person was deciding whether to speak. Signora Rinaldi, a man said, careful. Is this Julia? I'm sorry, I may have the wrong number. No, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. This is Julia. Who is this? Silence again. Then, quietly. My name is Paolo Venturi. I work with Marco on paperwork, on the jobs. My fingers went cold. Did something happen? I asked. No, I mean, he exhaled, like he hated what he was doing. I shouldn't be calling you. I meant to call Marco, but since you answered... He stopped. And then he said the one sentence that changed the shape of my day. Don't sign anything you haven't read. And don't sign anything alone. Do you understand? I swallowed. Why are you telling me this? His voice softened, just a little. Because you have a child, he said, and because I've seen too many families destroyed by just a paper. I couldn't breathe for a second. Paolo, what's going on? I asked. I can't explain it on the phone, he said, quick now, like he was afraid someone could hear him through the line. I'm sorry, I said what I could. Goodbye. The call ended. I stood in my kitchen staring at my phone like it had become heavier, and something simple, terrifying, and completely clear settled inside me. This wasn't stress. This wasn't men talking business. This was a situation they were preparing without me. And if I waited for Marco to be honest, I might be waiting until the moment the trap closed. I picked up my phone again. This time I called Francesca, because I didn't need gossip, I didn't need drama, I needed a human being. And I still believed, God help me, I still believed my best friend was safe. She answered on the second ring, cheerful, already awake in a way that made me feel slow. Jules, how are you? For 1 second, I couldn't speak. The words got stuck behind my teeth. And then they came out raw, without a pretty introduction. I think Marco is hiding something, I said. Something with papers. And I'm scared. Francesca went quiet. Just for 1 second. Not long enough for most people to notice, but I noticed. Because when your life starts cracking, you stop listening to words. You listen to pauses. Where are you? She asked quickly. I'm coming. I told her. She said, 20 minutes. I hung up and stared at the blank wall across my kitchen, and a thought slid in, small, unwanted, but sharp. What if I'm about to open the door to help, and it's not help? I shook my head. No, that's paranoia. I'm tired. But deep inside, something that sounded a lot like Matteo's quiet voice whispered, watch carefully. Francesca picked the bar herself. Not at home, she said. You need to get out of those walls. Her voice sounded caring, and for a second I almost believed it was that simple. Fresh air, a cappuccino, a friend, a reset. Almost. I got there early and took a table by the window so I could see the entrance. That was new for me, this need to watch doors. I told myself it was just a good seat, but the truth was uglier. I wanted to know what was coming before it reached me. Francesca walked in like she owned the room. Bright smile, confident steps, the kind of energy that makes other people feel a little safer just by standing near it. She spotted me, her face lit up, and she leaned in for a hug that smelled like expensive shampoo and cold morning air. Jules, she said, squeezing me, you're tense. First coffee, then you tell me everything. She sat across from me and placed her phone on the table, screen up, like it was nothing. I noticed. I didn't comment. Want me to order? She asked, already turning her head toward the counter. My treat. Cappuccino, I said, and something small I didn't eat. She nodded and went, moving fast like she had a checklist in her head. While she ordered, I watched the bar around me. A man in the corner held a newspaper like a shield. A woman hissed into her phone, whispering like she was trying not to explode in public. Rome was doing what Rome always does, living. And I sat there feeling like I'd been pushed to the edge of my own life. Francesca came back with a tray and sat down, sliding my cappuccino toward me like she was delivering comfort in a cup. "Okay," she said, leaning in. "Tell me, what's going on with Marco?" I stared at the foam for a second because it felt safer than her eyes. "I went to the site," I said slowly, "just to bring him coffee, and I heard a conversation. They were talking about signatures, liability, and Marco said—" My throat tightened, but I forced the words out. "He said I wasn't involved. He said I was just at home." Francesca's mouth opened like she was shocked, but the shock felt too clean, too quick, like she'd rehearsed the correct face. "He could have said that because he was stressed. Men say stupid things when they're under pressure." "It wasn't stupid," I said. "It sounded like a plan, like he already knows I'm going to sign something." Francesca softened her expression and reached across the table, covering my hand with hers. Warm skin, familiar pressure, a touch I'd trusted for years. For a second, I felt my eyes burn, like I might actually cry. "Listen," she said gently, "you're right to be scared, but you're not alone. We'll figure it out." We. That word always gets me, because I want to believe in it so badly. I almost told her about Paolo Venturi's call. I almost said the name out loud. But something inside me hesitated. Not logic. Instinct. A mother's instinct, maybe. So instead, I said what felt safer. "I'm not scared for me," I admitted. "I'm scared for Matteo. He feels everything. He looks at me like he's already an adult." Francesca nodded hard, almost eager. "Matteo is so smart," she said. "But you don't have to carry this by yourself. Talk to Marco calmly, no accusations. Just say, 'I need to understand what I'm signing.' That's it." I gave a short laugh that didn't feel like laughter. "You've met Marco when he's calm," I said. "He's only calm when he's winning." Francesca smiled, but something flickered in it. Irritation, maybe. So fast I could have missed it if I wasn't already watching for cracks. "Then don't be alone with him," she said quickly. "Have someone there, me, or a lawyer." The word lawyer landed too smoothly, like it had been sitting on her tongue, waiting. I glanced at her phone on the table. Screen dark now, but her fingers rested on it anyway, like she was guarding it. "Jules," she sighed, "I'm going to say this straight. Marco is on the edge right now. Deadlines, crews, money. He's not a villain, he's just scared." "Scared?" I repeated. "Scared of losing control," she said, and the way she said it sounded like a pre-forgiveness. That's when something in me clicked. People who are truly in control don't talk about control like it's oxygen. We sat in silence for a few seconds. The espresso machine hissed behind the counter like it was releasing pressure for both of us. I took a sip of cappuccino and it was too hot. I flinched, set it down too quickly. Francesca laughed. "Careful," she said. "You always rush when you're nervous." "I'm not rushing," I said quietly. "I'm trying to get ahead of something." "Ahead of what?" she asked. And that's when I said the thing I'd been trying not to say even to myself. Ahead of the moment Matteo becomes the price of adult mistakes. Francesca squeezed my hand again. "Okay, then here's the plan. You sign nothing, you talk to Marco, and if he pressures you, you call me immediately." I nodded because it sounded like a plan, and I needed a plan like I needed air. Then she reached for her bag, casual, easy, like she was grabbing lip balm or a tissue. Instead, she picked up her phone. So natural, it almost fooled me. Almost. "Sorry," she said with a light laugh. "Work. I'll answer fast, okay?" "Sure," I said, and forced a smile onto my face like makeup. Her thumb moved quickly. One line, another, then send. I didn't see the words, but I saw the angle, how she tipped the screen away from me by just enough to matter, and I felt my stomach go cold. She put the phone back down and looked at me with that same supportive face, as if nothing had happened. "So," she said, voice sweet, "tell me exactly what you heard, word for word if you can." Word for word. Not how I felt, not how scared I was. Details. Like she needed the right vocabulary for someone else. I swallowed and lied. "It was loud," I said. "I didn't catch everything." Francesca nodded too smoothly, accepting it as if it was a minor inconvenience. "Okay, then you just do this. Be softer with him. Don't provoke him. Let him think you're just anxious, not suspicious. Let him think." There it was again. Not let him feel safe, let him think. My fingers tightened around my cup. "Francesca," I asked quietly, "why do you sound so sure what Marco will think?" She blinked once, slow, then she smiled. "Because I know men. I know how they protect themselves." It was a good answer, a believable answer, but I'd known her for 20 years, and she didn't say my husband's name. She said men, like Marco wasn't a person in her mouth anymore, just a category, a strategy. We left the bar and stepped into the cold, damp air. Francesca started chatting about small things, new cafes, a neighbor, how January always feels heavy. I listened, nodded, played my part, but inside, a single thought kept repeating, sharp and calm. If she just texted Marco, then I'm not walking home to my husband. I'm walking into a game they already started. And the worst part? I still loved them. The people who were about to hurt me. Marco came home late, but not the kind of late I was used to, not the messy, exhausted, dusty late. This was controlled late. The kind of late where a man has already decided what story he's going to tell you before he walks through the door. I heard the key turn, and for the first time in our entire marriage, I didn't rush into the hallway. I stayed in the kitchen and pretended I was washing a glass that didn't need washing. I let the water run too long. I could hear my own nerves in the sound of it. Marco stepped in quietly, almost careful. When I finally looked up, I expected to see stress carved into his face. Instead, he looked prepared. Hair neat, coat straight, eyes calm in a way that didn't match the day he'd clearly had. "Ciao," he said softly. Too soft. He kissed my cheek and held it half a second longer than usual, like affection was something he could use as evidence. "You were out today?" he asked lightly, like he was asking what I bought at the market. My stomach tightened. So he already knew. I turned off the water and dried my hands slowly. "I went to your site," I said. "I brought you coffee." Marco's face didn't crack. Not really. He smiled. "Amore, you don't have to do that. It's dirty up there, loud, not safe." Not safe. A perfect word. A word designed to push me back into the place he wanted me. "I didn't even see you," I said. "I was in the stairwell." He tilted his head, playing surprise. "Really? That's a shame. I would have loved it." I looked at him, at the calm, at the smoothness, and the thought landed like a stone. Someone warned him before I got home. Francesca. I didn't say it out loud. I didn't give him the satisfaction of knowing how quickly the puzzle clicked. "Marco," I said, keeping my voice low, "I heard you." His smile held. "Heard me?" You were talking to a man, about a signature, about liability." I forced the words out clean. "And you said I wasn't involved. You said I was just at home." Marco exhaled like I'd told him I was upset about the weather. "Julia," he said slowly, like he was calming a child, "you're tired, you're anxious. I don't want you working yourself up over nothing." "I'm not working myself up," I said. "I'm repeating what you said." He lifted his hands, palms out, a gesture of peace that felt like a warning. "Job sites have conversations," he said. "Lawyers, contractors, clients, words that sound scary, it's routine." "Transfer liability is routine?" I asked. His eyes narrowed for half a second, then the smile returned. thinner. Do you want to fight? He asked. There it was. If I wanted to fight, then I was the problem. I swallowed hard. I want to understand what you want me to sign. Marco stepped closer and put his hand on my shoulder. Warm, familiar, heavy. You don't have to sign anything, he said quietly. Nobody is forcing you. He paused. I just want you to trust me. Trust me. He said it like a prayer, and all I could hear was his voice on that staircase. She's not involved. She's just at home. I did trust you, I said. That's why I'm asking. Trust isn't blindness. His grip tightened slightly, just enough for my skin to notice. Julia, he said, you know me. I build. I handle things. I carry the pressure. I don't want you getting involved and then worrying. Involved. That word came out sharper than his earlier softness. It slipped, just for a second. I took his hand off my shoulder calmly, like I was moving a cup away from the edge of the table. Marco went still. Where's Matteo? He asked. In his room, I said. Marco raised his voice half a notch, not a shout, but a command. Matteo, vieni qui. My chest tightened. Matteo walked in slowly, like he already knew what he was being called into. He stopped in the doorway and looked from his father to me, eyes wide and careful. Marco's face brightened into that father smile that always worked on strangers. Tell your mom everything's fine, he said. Tell her I've got it under control. Matteo didn't move. He swallowed. Dad, he started. Tell her, Marco said again, stepping a little closer to him. Not a threat, but pressure. Matteo's eyes flicked to me for a split second, like he was asking permission to breathe. I don't know, he said finally. Marco laughed, short and sharp. What do you mean you don't know? He said, like Matteo had failed a simple test. You see your mom is nervous. Do you want her to be nervous? That's when something hot rose in my chest. Not tears, not hysteria. Protective rage. Enough, I said. Marco turned to me. Enough what? Enough putting Matteo between us, I said, voice shaking but steady. He's a child. He's my son, Marco said, and the way he said it sounded like ownership. Matteo lifted his head. For the first time that night, his voice was clear. He's your son, Matteo said quietly, but he's her son too. Silence. Marco stared at him like he didn't recognize the boy in front of him, and I stared at Matteo, feeling two things at once, pride and fear, because kids pay for honesty in adult wars. Marco inhaled, then switched tones like flipping a light. Okay, he said, smooth again. No drama. We'll talk tomorrow. I'm tired. He ruffled Matteo's hair, performative, gentle, and walked toward the bedroom, shutting the door carefully, not slamming it, because he didn't want the neighbors to hear what was happening. He wanted the fight to stay inside the family, where he could control it. Matteo stayed in the kitchen doorway after Marco disappeared. His lips trembled. Mom, is he mad? I walked to him and held him tight. He's scared, I said honestly, but it's not your job to fix that. Then whose job is it? Matteo asked, and he sounded exhausted in a way no 14-year-old should. I closed my eyes. Mine, I said, and I will. Matteo nodded, but I could feel how badly he wanted to believe me. He went back to his room, and I stood alone in the kitchen, staring at the table like it might give me answers, because now I knew something else, too. Francesca had warned him, which meant everything that came next wouldn't be an accident. It would be a script. And if this was going to turn into a war, I needed to learn the rules before they used my son as the battlefield. The next morning, Marco left like a man who didn't want to leave fingerprints. No slammed door, no forgotten keys, no half-awake kiss that meant something. He moved through our apartment quietly, efficiently, like he was trying to keep everything clean, even the air. At the door, he kissed my forehead, quick. "I'm going to be busy today," he said. "Don't spiral, okay? Don't spiral." He said it like a command, not a comfort. Matteo was nearby, so I just nodded. I didn't want his day to start with tension clinging to his shoulders. Matteo went to school silent. Before he left, he looked at me the way he'd been looking at me lately, checking my face like it was a weather report. I smiled at him, and he pretended to believe it. As soon as the door shut, the apartment sounded empty in a way I'd never noticed before. I cleaned. Of course I did. I wiped a counter that was already clean, straightened a chair that was already straight. I kept my hands busy because if my hands stopped, my mind would start screaming. The doorbell rang. I felt it in my stomach before I even reached the door. When I looked through the peephole, Adriana was standing there, in her dark coat, scarf perfectly arranged, carrying bags like she was bringing salvation. I opened the door. "Buongiorno, cara," she said with that soft smile that always felt like pressure. "I brought you food. You look tired." She didn't wait for an invitation. She walked in like this was her apartment too, like she was still Mama di Marco, and that gave her a key nobody could see. She went straight to the kitchen and started unpacking containers onto my table. Soup, bread, cheese, something warm and heavy that smelled like obligation. "Marco told me you had a conversation last night," she said casually, not looking at me. So he told her. Of course he did. "Yes," I said, "we did." Adriana sighed the way you sigh about bad manners. "Men carry too much," she said. "You have to be softer." "Softer?" I repeated. He called Matteo into the kitchen and tried to make him pick a side. Adriana turned to face me, smile still in place. "Julia, you are a woman. You have a home, you have a husband, you have a child. Don't make this dramatic." The word home sounded like a cage when she said it. "I'm not making it dramatic," I said. "I'm trying to understand what's happening." "What's happening?" she shrugged. "Life. Marco builds, Marco works, Marco provides, and you—" She paused, looking me up and down like she was measuring me. "You support." Support. Another pretty word that turns ugly when it means silence. I reached into the cabinet for mugs, just to give my hands something safe to do. "Coffee?" I asked. Adriana nodded. "And please," she added, waving her hand, "no psychology. In a family, things are simple." Simple. Like enduring. Like swallowing. Like signing. We sat at the table and the coffee cooled between us. She watched me over the rim of her cup. "Marco said you went to the site," she said. "I did." "That is not a place for a woman," she said. "Dirty. Men. Talk. You bring that dirt back into your family." "I brought him coffee," I said, "like a wife." Adriana's smile sharpened. "A wife brings peace, not questions." My chest tightened. "Adriana," I said carefully, "did you come here to help me or to convince me to stay quiet?" Her eyes narrowed. "I came because I'm a mother," she said. "I protect my son." "And who protects mine?" I asked. Her cup hit the saucer a little too hard. "Matteo is a DeSantis," she said. "Family will protect him." Family, meaning Marco, meaning her. "My son is mine too," I said, "and I won't trade his safety for a quiet smile." Adriana went still. Then she softened again because she was good at that. "You're emotional," she said, like it explained everything. Marco doesn't like being questioned. I noticed, I said. Then she leaned in and delivered it like a friendly tip. Tonight, Marco will bring you documents. You'll sign. It's a formality. After that, everything gets easier. My spine went cold. So that was the plan. I stared at her and spoke slowly so my voice wouldn't shake. I'm not signing anything I haven't read. Adriana's smile stopped reaching her eyes completely. You don't trust your husband? She asked. I trust myself, I said. That was new for me, saying it out loud without apologizing. Adriana stood, adjusted her scarf, gathered her bag. I'll talk to Marco. I'll tell him to be patient. You're sensitive right now. Sensitive, emotional, dramatic. Words used to shrink women back into place. She left, and I stood with my hand on the door after it closed, listening to her footsteps fade down the stairs. Then I whispered to the empty hallway, like a promise. I'm not letting you turn my son into leverage. And I went back to the kitchen and started making dinner. Not for the family, for Matteo, and for me. Marco did bring the papers that evening. Not a thick folder, just a few neat pages clipped together like it was nothing. He set them on the edge of the table and placed a pen on top, like he was laying out a simple little task. Just a formality, he said. I'll explain tomorrow. I'm exhausted. I didn't fight that night. I served dinner. I smiled. And I watched him like he was a man I didn't fully know anymore. The next day I went to his site again, telling myself it was normal, telling myself it was just to talk, just to see his face in daylight and find the husband I used to recognize. That's where I saw her, Chiara Bianchi. She stood in the stairwell like she belonged there, but the truth was she didn't belong there at all, which is what made her stand out. Perfect hair, perfect coat, espresso cup in hand like it was an accessory, phone in the other hand, eyes that didn't look nervous in a place full of dust and concrete. When she looked up and saw me, her smile appeared instantly, polished and smooth. Buongiorno, she said. You're Julia, right? Not a question. A confirmation. Yes, I said. And you are... Chiara, she said lightly. Chiara Bianchi. She stepped closer like space belonged to her. I help Marco with organization, she added, choosing her words carefully. Client communication, keeping things presentable. Presentable, a word that sounded like my whole marriage lately. I tried to walk past her. She shifted just enough to stay in my orbit. Marco said you're very family-focused, she said, sweetly. Family-focused, like it was a hobby. He talks about me? I asked. Chiara blinked once, then smiled wider. He says you're a good mom, she said, and that you worry. Worry, the polite way of saying she thinks I'm inconvenient. I'm here to see my husband. Is he inside? He is, she said. He's in a meeting. Then, like she was doing me a favor, can I give you one piece of advice? I didn't ask for advice, I said. She laughed softly like I was cute. Men like Marco don't respond well to pressure, she said. The calmer you are, the better it is for everyone. For everyone? I repeated. She tilted her head. For Matteo, she said. And she said my son's name like she had the right. Something hot and clean rose in me. Don't say my son's name, I said. Calm, but cold. Chiara's smile flickered for just a breath, then returned. Sorry, she said. I just want things to go smoothly. Smoothly. That's what predators call it when they don't want you to struggle. I went inside. Marco was there with a man in his 50s holding a folder, calm, professional, not a worker, a lawyer or someone who spoke lawyer. Marco saw me and froze for half a second, then smiled like yesterday didn't exist. Julia, he said too brightly, what are you doing here? I want to talk, I said. I promised. Not now, he said. At home. No, I said. Now. The man with the folder cleared his throat. Marco, should we continue later? He asked politely. Marco's jaw tightened. Yes, he said. I'll call you. The man glanced at me on his way out, 1 extra second like he understood exactly who I was. And that's when I knew I wasn't paranoid. I was late. Chiara appeared in the doorway behind me. Of course she did. Marco's voice dropped. You're making a scene, I replied. I'm asking questions. Why does your mother already know you're bringing me documents? Marco's eyes narrowed. My mother worries. And Francesca worries too? I asked. His expression shifted. You talked to Francesca? That was the moment I stopped pretending, because he didn't ask, what did you tell her? He asked, like he already knew the conversation existed, because he did. I looked at him. You have people coaching me. Be softer. Don't pressure you. Let you think I'm just anxious. Marco's smile vanished. Because you're anxious, you are, he snapped. Because you're ruining everything. I laughed once sharp. Me or you? Chiara spoke from the doorway with fake warmth. I'll wait downstairs, Marco. Downstairs, like she had a place to wait. She left, and Marco watched her go with a look that hurt more than any insult. Then I asked the question I didn't want to ask. Are you with her? Marco didn't deny it. He didn't confirm it either. He just said, not now, which was confirmation enough. I'm not signing anything, I said. Not until I understand it. Marco stepped closer. You'll do this at home, he said low, and you'll stay calm. Understood? I nodded, not because I agreed, because sometimes the safest thing you can do is let a man think he's still writing the script. And I walked out of that building knowing one thing for sure. Marco wasn't just hiding something. He was building a new life, and he was trying to move the weight of the old one onto me. That afternoon, I went to Matteo's school with his forgotten sports bag. A normal excuse. A mother errand. But the truth was, I needed to see my son's face. I needed to remind myself what I was protecting. Matteo walked toward me faster than usual. Mom, he said, relief slipping through his voice before he caught it. Why are you here? You forgot this, I said, handing him the bag. He took it, but he didn't walk away. His eyes moved like he was checking the street. Dad, he started, then swallowed. Dad was on the phone last night. I heard him say, she'll sign. My mother will push her. Push her? My throat went tight. You're sure he meant me? I asked, even though we both knew. Matteo nodded, his jaw clenched. Mom, he whispered, you're not going to sign, right? I cupped his face in my hands. Old habit, even though he was taller now. I'm not signing, I said. I promise. He exhaled like he'd been holding his breath for days. And then my phone rang. Unknown number. My instinct screamed, but my thumb answered anyway. Pronto? A careful man's voice. Signora Rinaldi, Giulia? This is Paolo Venturi. My blood went cold. I need you to listen, he said quickly. There was a lawyer at Marco's site today. They're preparing papers, and those papers can put you personally on the hook for obligations tied to his business. I gripped the phone so hard my fingers hurt. What obligations? I asked. Guarantees, he said. Contractor debts, late penalties, possibly tax problems. The wording will sound harmless, just to reassure the bank, just for the file, just a formality. His voice lowered. And then you realize you didn't sign peace, you signed a cage. Why are you telling me this? I whispered. Because you have a child, he said, and I've watched women get crushed by just paper, while the man walks away and calls it business. My eyes stung. What do? I asked. Don't sign. Not tonight. not ever without legal counsel. Then he added, like he'd already thought it through, I'm going to send you a name, Serena Lupi. She's tough. She won't comfort you, but she'll keep you alive. Alive. That word hit different when you're a mother. Don't tell Marco you spoke to me, Paolo warned. Don't say my name. He'll turn it into you being irrational. He'll twist it. I understand, I said. Protect Matteo, he said softly. Sometimes that means protecting yourself first. The call ended, and sitting there in my car, staring at Serena Lupi's name on my screen, I finally understood what the lucky accident really was. If I hadn't gone to Matteo's school, I wouldn't have heard what Matteo heard. If I hadn't heard it, I would have told myself I was overreacting. And if I believed I was overreacting, I would have signed. Because love makes women do quiet, obedient things, even when it's a trap.
Serena's office didn't feel warm. It felt clean. Stone hallways, echoing footsteps, people holding folders like their lives were inside. Serena opened her door and looked at me like she saw a situation, not a sob story. Julia Rinaldi? Yes. Come in. Close the door. I sat down. She didn't offer tea. She offered clarity. Talk, she said. Short, specific. No, I think. So I did. When I finished, Serena didn't look surprised. Paolo isn't your lawyer, she said. But if he warned you, it's dirty. She leaned forward. Tonight they'll pressure you, she said. Softly, through family, through trust, through Adriana, through your son. They'll make you feel guilty for protecting yourself. What do? I asked. You sign nothing, she said. Nothing, not even received, not even acknowledgement. And if Marco explodes? I asked. Serena's eyes didn't change. Better an explosion without a signature than silence with debt, she said. Then she gave me rules. Not inspiration, rules. Keep it in writing. Don't mention Paolo. Don't argue about feelings. Repeat one sentence. I need time to review this with counsel. And if I felt unsafe, record, quietly, screen down, let the room speak for itself. You're not starting a war, Serena said, watching my face. You're ending the part where they can use you. When I walked out, I wasn't calm, but I was steadier. I had a plan, and that was the first real thing I'd held in days.
I got home before Marco and cooked dinner like nothing was wrong. Chop, stir, plate. Normal motions. Armor. Matteo came in and read my face. You okay? He asked. I'm okay, I said. And tonight you stay close to me. He nodded. He was on my side. He was just scared of what choosing a side could cost him. Marco came home with Adriana. Of course he did. They walked in like a united front. Marco kissed my cheek, smooth. Adriana kissed the air near mine, polite. Then Marco put the papers on the table and set a pen on top, like he was placing a leash. This is for the bank and contractors, he said, just to close things out. You want peace, right? I want to understand what I'm signing, I said. Adriana sighed like I was exhausting. Julia, she said softly, trust your family. I am, I said. That's why I'm reading. Marco's smile thinned. You're making drama. No, I said, I'm taking 2 minutes. I read, and the language was slippery. Confirmations, acknowledgments, statements of awareness, the kind of words that don't look like a noose until you're wearing it. What am I acknowledging? I asked. Routine, Marco said quickly, standard. Then you sign it, I said. Adriana leaned in. Do you want Marco to lose work? Do you want Matteo to suffer because you're stubborn? Marco turned to Matteo like a man reaching for his sharpest tool. Tell your mom everything's fine, he said gently. Tell her dad has it under control. Matteo froze, and I felt the heat rise again. No, I said. Matteo doesn't speak for you. Marco's face tightened. He's family, he snapped. He's a child, I said, and if you use him again, I'm leaving this table. For a second, the room went still, because they weren't used to me drawing lines. Marco leaned closer and dropped his voice. You think you're smarter than me? He hissed. You think I won't break you? My skin went cold, but my face stayed calm. I already broke something. Us, I whispered back. I stood. Matteo, go to your room, I said softly. Close the door. Don't come out until I call you. His eyes filled, but he obeyed. Marco stood too, anger now visible. You're humiliating me, he said. No, I said. You're humiliating yourself by demanding a signature instead of telling the truth. I reached for my phone like I was checking the time. Screen down, record. Marco noticed and sneered. Oh, now you're playing victim? No, I said. Now I'm acting like an adult. They left without slamming a door, because appearances mattered more than anything. After they were gone, I held Matteo until his breathing slowed, and I knew one thing with brutal certainty. They weren't going to stop. They were going to speed up.
I woke up before my alarm. Marco slept like a man who believed he still controlled the ending. I got Matteo ready quietly, like we were doing something simple, and then we left. I didn't write a dramatic note. I wrote a boundary. I'm with Matteo. I'm speaking through counsel. Don't contact his school. Serena moved fast. Requests, notices, paperwork that wasn't romantic, wasn't emotional, just protective. Matteo sat against the wall in her office, trying to look older than he was. Serena looked at him and softened by 1 degree. You don't have to say anything, she told him, but you should know your mother is doing the right thing. Matteo's shoulders dropped the tiniest bit. Then Serena looked at me. Today, Marco will get angry, she said, because you took away your silence. She was right. His calls started immediately. Texts, accusations, shame. You're embarrassing me. You're destroying the family. You've lost your mind. Adriana's message came too, of course. Endure. Don't disgrace us. I didn't answer her. I answered Marco once. I'm reviewing everything with my attorney. I will not sign without counsel. Communicate in writing. That night, Marco showed up at my mother's place with Adriana beside him like a shadow. He stood in the doorway wearing that calm face. Husband, father, reasonable man. Julia, he said softly, we need to talk. You're taking this too far. No, I said. I'm taking it seriously. Then I said it clearly where everyone could hear it. You talk to me through my attorney, and you talk to Matteo as a father. No pressure, no scripts, no tell your mom. Adriana stepped forward. You're taking his son from him. No, I said. I'm taking leverage away. Marco turned to Matteo, ready to pull the same move again. Son, he said gently, do you want to come home? Matteo froze, and I didn't rescue him with words. I just looked at him and stayed steady, giving him the space to tell the truth without carrying my fear. Matteo swallowed. Dad, he said quietly, I want you to stop pressuring her. Marco blinked like he'd been slapped. I'm not pressuring. You are, Matteo said. You tried to make me speak for you. I don't want to be in the middle. Adriana sucked in a breath like she couldn't believe a child would choose honesty over obedience. My mother stepped closer to the door and said, calm and sharp, Enough. Nobody raises their voice at a child in this house.
Marco stood there for a moment, searching for a crack. There wasn't one. He left. Adriana followed. And when the door closed, Matteo finally cried. Quiet, exhausted tears. I held him and pressed my lips to his hair. "Does he hate us?" he whispered. "No," I said. "He's angry because he's losing control, but that's not your fault." "Are we going to be okay?" he asked. "Yes," I said. And for the first time, I didn't say it like a wish. I said it like a decision. The weeks that followed weren't pretty. They were real. Serena made sure the responsibility Marco tried to push onto me stayed where it belonged, on the person who created it. Marco didn't crash to zero. He was too proud, too careful, too practiced at surviving. But he did fall. Contracts cooled. People got cautious. That perfect image cracked. Chiara disappeared like she'd never been there. Francesca texted like nothing happened. "How are you? I'm worried." I never answered, because silence isn't always weakness. Sometimes it's the cleanest boundary you can set. And one morning, weeks later, Matteo stood in my mother's kitchen eating toast and said, without looking up, "It's quieter now." I closed my eyes for 1 second and let the relief move through me, because that was the win. Not revenge, not humiliation. Peace. A child who could breathe again. A home that stayed a home. And a woman who finally stopped being just at home.